from a psychological perspective. Before I start, I kind of feel that, and we'll come on to the whole notion of fatigue as some sort of symptom that can be easily delineated and defined, that we can actually have an individual presentation on it. And I'm actually not that sure about that. I think fatigue is integrated completely with Behçet and how people live their lives with Behçet. So I think it has impact on all sorts of things, and I think lots of other things have impact on fatigue. So I guess I'm saying there's multiple factors involved in fatigue and ways to live with it. Okay, so, and I guess to reiterate, really, fatigue, I'm using that as an example of the complexity of living with Behçet. So a little preamble about me and where I'm from and what we do there. We have three, for those who are not in the UK, we have 3 centres of excellence in 3 different cities. We've got London, Birmingham and Liverpool. And we have a psychologist in each setting. And I'm the psychologist who works in the London centre, and I've been there for about 2 years now. And why with it? Why is psychology involved? Well, I think 2 things really. It comes from the grassroots, from the Behçet Society itself, and the clinicians like Professor Fortune and others who have worked with yourself for a long time, recognising that actually there's more to this than just biologics, and in terms of living with Behçet, and it was important to think about those things and think about how we cope with Behçet. The other thing is the UK government is increasingly had a focus on long-term conditions and long-term medical conditions, and psychological well-being and mental welfare of people with long-term conditions is it's higher on the agenda than it certainly used to be. So I think that's welcome as well. What I do in the centre, well, we have an open referral system for everyone who uses the London Centre, and I offer assessment and consultation as part of the multidisciplinary team. So you see all the other professionals, and if people opt in if they want to see me or not. Some people do and some people don't, and that's fine. And we sometimes do follow-up, sometimes we advise people to use local services or try and link in with local services, because of course people come from all over the UK and further afield actually, interestingly. I do follow up people at clinic appointments as part of the multidisciplinary team. I also offer individual psychological therapy in a separate clinic for people who are able to travel into the London Centre. So that's actually quite a small minority of people, but it is available for them. And I thought this idea of fatigue as a standalone symptom. This is, we do a screening assessment at the London Behçet Centre that looks at all kinds of psychological and symptoms of Behçet, particularly the core symptoms of fatigue, pain, and cognitive impairment. And this is a screening of 226 people who've been to our clinic. This is their first attendances, or certainly the first time that I had screened them. And these are some of the results. And I thought it was interesting to look at the fatigue one. We see that about a third have severe problems in coping with fatigue. So it's very, very common, and actually it's about 85% of people have at least moderate degree of difficulty in experiencing and coping with fatigue. It's extremely common in the group. But actually, so are lots of other things as well. Pain is also very high in terms of coping with it, in terms of its frequency and the types. Cognitive impairment is again very high, 75% for at least some cognitive or memory problems. And as you can see, there's kind of combinations with other mood and psychological issues like anxiety and depression. And I think a lot of these can't really be separated. They are often intertwined, although we do have to differentiate between them as well. And I think one thing I will differentiate between is fatigue and depression. Because lots of people come in and say, everyone says I'm depressed, my GP says I'm depressed, and actually they're not, they're fatigued. They don't show the classic kind of cognitive symptoms of depression. It's just that they're very flat mood because of fatigue during flares, or fatigue generally. So I think it's really important to differentiate. People think that they're depressed and go on antidepressants, and actually they're not depressed. They need support around what's going on for them. So it's interesting to think about. In my clinic, I've seen, this is last year's data, I haven't collated this year's data. In addition to this core screening, these are some of the, sorry the writing's really hasn't come up very well, I'll talk it through, I do apologise. These are some of the people I've seen for full psychological assessment, and these are some of the issues they present with to me. Again, in this column, the left-hand column, the most common symptoms, fatigue, followed by pain. Then we'll look at what we call adjustment or acceptance issues, or getting used to your diagnosis. And then below that, just slightly below, that's cognitive impairment. But when I look at the kind of psychological features, the most common is anxiety problems, followed by mood and depression problems. Number 3, which is quite interesting, is a minority of people, but is a significant minority, is trauma-related symptoms. So quite a lot of people presenting with post-traumatic stress disorder, but a lot of it's undiagnosed and unrecognised. And I think that also features, for some people, elements of fatigue. And we can have a think about what I mean by trauma. I think we have people who have sometimes very difficult pasts, like childhood adversity. We have people with very specific traumatic events in their life. But also we have people who I think have trauma by 1,000 cuts. And I think we can look at that, about how people journey through the medical establishment, how they journey through life, how they come up against frequent difficulties that ultimately result in these kind of trauma-like symptoms. And below that we then have things like suicidal ideation, self-harm, and substance use, and a small group of other enduring mental health needs like bipolar and psychosis and various other things. But then alongside that, lots of other common concerns, so that are just kind of that are associated with sleep-related issues, other types of health concerns that people have, family-related issues, coping, changing relationships and roles within families, lots of issues around parenting, pregnancy. That's a big thing when we have a support group, and something that the young women always want to talk about is pregnancy and parenting, and lots of discussions and concern around that. And sadly and unfortunately, there is an element of domestic violence that people experience. I think that we see that in many long-term conditions anyway, with pressures, but there are also maybe other reasons why that happens to some people. Work-related issues are very common, and we'll touch on I'm going to use work as an example of some of the social processes that affect people with Behçet. But certainly sickness and employability and worrying about the future and career, and issues around bullying, harassment at work are not that unusual in the group. Social isolation, loss of friends, lack of understanding, we'll touch on these issues again. This is about what happens when you're living with this condition and what happens to people around us. Housing, financial issues, very big concern for lots of people. In the UK, in the specific context that we talk about, that raises concerns and anxieties around that. And actually, what's a concern for other family members, from people who are Behçet, concern about parents, concern about partner, concern about their children, of their own, the family members' mental well-being or physical well-being. So issues around they can impact on what's happening with people around them. And relationship and sexual well-being, another quite common area that, again, it's interesting when people in the medical clinics, they don't tend not to talk about that. But we get them together in the support group and people all talk about intimacy, sexual relationships and sexual well-being. We want to talk about it. It's a really important issue. So the whole thing comes with a whole range of, as you know, a whole range of issues to live with. And fatigue, I think, and I argue, is a symptom of all these things coming together, plus the biological aspects of the inflammation and inflammatory process. Okay, so there's a little definition. You'll probably know more about the biological processes than I do, the inflammatory processes that result in fatigue. And we see, certainly in clinic, there's some people who only present, or I see some people who only present with fatigue when they're going through active flares. I would say that's the minority of people who otherwise are absolutely fine, and then they have a flare, the inflammatory process caused by the disease itself then places them into a fatigue state. From a psychosocial perspective, I think the evidence base is less clear and the theories are less clear. We know, it's quite obvious, it's obvious to people who live with Behçet's, it's obvious to clinicians who work with them, that when people have adverse life events or there's additional stressors in life, then flares are much more common. And we know that that's not just a Behçet's issue, that's an issue for everyone. So psychosocial stress impacts on the inflammatory process. I'm not entirely sure why that is. Certainly stress is related to the immune system activation, which is related to autonomic nervous system. So in psychological stress, we have what we call the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, which I'm sure you all know about. It's when you use the example of we evolve to run away from things, to fight things, or stand still and freeze when we feel we're in threat or danger. We see this in all kinds of organisms, all kinds of animals. They have the same response. It's an innate, unconscious response, and it's a bodily response. And the body's flooded with cortisol and epinephrine and adrenaline, and it affects, it shuts down the immune system, and it helps process glucose and gets the body ready for action, to do something, or to not do anything. That's fine, it works fine. However, if you have chronic stress or long-term anxiety or long-term pressures, you will have constant and overactivation of this response system. Now, it seems a little bit counterintuitive that if you have lots of cortisol flowing through your blood, that actually your immune system is going to go into overdrive. That doesn't make a lot of sense. In people without Behçet's, it's usually been described as it affects the immune system, it suppresses the immune system, therefore makes you more likely to have infections, more vulnerable, and therefore you then get a reaction by the immune system, overreaction. But there are other models out there, and there's more recent models around chronic stress affecting how cells respond to cortisol, so become less efficiently respond to the cortisol. Therefore, the cortisol doesn't have a dampening effect on the inflammatory process. So there are different theories, all of which are pointing to an increase in inflammatory process, increase in inflammation that we see in Behçet's flares when people have additional stress going on. So, one of the recommendations, I took this quote at the bottom from a clinician, not our clinic, but it was in one of the papers, who kind of recommended that people should avoid adversity in life as much as possible. It's really helpful, but okay, right, okay, fair enough. It's a point, not very useful. Alright, so I kind of think, and what I'll focus on is those kind of psychosocial aspects of stress and how it affects fatigue, rather than biological aspects, because I think these are kind of parallel things that are affecting each other. And I think, I'm definitely saying this is a biological process, regardless of a psychosocial origin or a biological origin, like an infection or some kind of immune response. But if it's psychosocial in origin, there may be things we can do about it that doesn't necessarily involve biologics. We'll see. And just the end result of all this inflammatory process is fatigue. So my job in psychology is to really think about broaden it out and I like to think about the interactions between ourselves, what goes on around us, who's around us, the things that happen to us, how we relate to those things, and then how we relate to ourselves because of those things. And then the effects of this on our body. The effects of this on our body is stress, immune response, inflammation, fatigue, as well as other things like the accompanying symptoms like chronic pain. And we very commonly see chronic pain together with chronic fatigue. Okay, well, we've talked a bit about the psychological process already. So consequences of either previous trauma by 1,000 cuts, or mood-related issues, or anxiety-related issues, we see one of the theories we have is the hypervigilance theory, which is the body's fight-flight mechanism. It's an attentional system, and it's used to subconsciously scanning and looking for danger. You're hyper-aroused and hyper-vigilant, and you don't even know it. It causes constant muscular tension. It looks for interpreting things in the environment might be wrong. That might be things on your body, or that might be how people talk to you, or how people interact with you, or what they say to you. It's based on previous experiences, and we project those previous experiences to understand the situation we're in now. I'll use the weapon as an example later. The other thing that happens is, so this system constantly operates when you're hyper-aroused. The other thing that happens is we gain experience and we learn and we develop habitual ways of being and thinking and behaving. And that reinforces the hyper-arousal. So it reinforces the idea that we need to maintain vigilance, that there are things wrong in the environment or wrong with us, that people are wrong. And that affects things we call neural networks and cognitive schemas. Cognitive schemas and neural networks are just ways we think. They activate thoughts in our mind, images, and emotions. An example of these is if we think of times that are where you've been in pain, or we're very sad, we can start activating thoughts or sensations around pain sensations in our body, or we can start accessing sad memories or difficult memories. When we do this automatically, when we are in a hyper-aroused state, because we're trying to make sense of what's going on around us. This is all happening at an unconscious level, okay? And it leaves you in an aroused state that maintains this activation of psychological stress that then has this cascade effect on your body and onto, in this case, we're talking about fatigue. All right, well, I want to move slightly from what's happening in your body and what's happening in your mind to what's happening around you as well. And I again think this is an area that's not really thought about terribly well. Although I think actually when we talk to these are stories that are very common. And I think yesterday there was lots of these kind of stories going around. I think one of the big features is things like having difficulty in the journey to diagnosis. And once you're diagnosed, to receiving treatment and to receive correct treatment and timely treatment when you need it. People with something like Behçet's, like other long-term conditions that are difficult to diagnose, they become label magnets. People are often diagnosed with Crohn's, or I think someone who's diagnosed with chronic fatigue for a long time, that's really common, because people don't know what's going on. And they try all kinds of things, diagnoses and labels on people. And the medical model, God bless them, they have a very straightforward traditional model, which is the symptom diagnosis treatment cure model. It works really well, often, but there are times when it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, it can be quite frustrating, and it can be engender hopelessness and helplessness in patients, but also in staff and personnel. And I think there are different consequences of that. You can get some physicians and some medics who will sit with patients and will sit sometimes in despair with patients and say, I don't know what's wrong with you, but there's something wrong with you and we'll try to find out. That's great. I don't think that's everyone's experience. I think other experiences are we end up with patients being rejected, we get good patient, bad patient ideas coming in, we get, if you're good, you're compliant, if you're bad, you're shouting, you're not taking medicines, you're complaining about the treatments, it's not working. And the medical establishment are powerful. They can label us, they give us treatments that might not work, if we are designated as a bad patient, then we can be rejected, and we can feel rejected and excluded. So I think this whole journey, which has been very rocky for people, does nothing but help develop this arousal, this experience of chronic stress and chronic vigilance and awareness. Because actually, you have got a bodily threat, you have got a disease that's painful, that's life-threatening, and that causes tissue damage. And then one of the other labels we get is, oh gosh, medical explain, fatigue is a toxic label. And somebody's just interested, the psychologist talking about fatigue, because actually there's lots of biological stuff here as well that needs to be talked about. And I'm really aware that the social history of words like fatigue and chronic fatigue have been much maligned in the last 20, 30 years. And it's only really now that even chronic fatigue, they're starting to accept that there might be immune system issues involved in it. It's highly elusive. I think people feel it's a bit of a bucket label and really not helpful. And wider social community, wider society also has a view on fatigue, and people who have been labelled with these things or experience these things. A lot of misunderstanding, a lot of negative. I think that's something you live with, is the labelling of you as either lazy, as someone who's not pulling the weight, as someone who's making excuses. These kind of dialogues and discourses are widely used, particularly in workplaces. I think another thing that we see in media, culture, community, and I used to do the theory around critical social gaze. Now this I use a lot with people. We talk about, well, in society we have ideals of success, ideals of beauty, ideals of where you should be in life, what you should be doing in life, and when you're not meeting those ideals, actually we feel that. We feel that we're not on script. When if you some of the teenagers I work with, not sitting their exams at the right time, they feel that the cohort's moving on beyond them. Those at university see their friends all going away doing things, they feel themselves stuck at home. They're off script. They feel that they're delayed, that they're left behind, and that therefore they're not successful, they're a failure. And that's something that's mediated in our society about what is good and what's successful and what's desirable. And I think a lot of this is explicit, but a lot of it is implicit as well when you live with something like Behçet. It may not always be a conscious awareness, but it's something that operates in our experiences. And certainly when we talk to people, it's in there. And it's part of the diagnosis, it's part of the adjustment and coming to terms with living this kind of life. And some of the things, one of the things I talked about is this idea of being off script. And using the idea that we have this in our mind, that we have this plan, this kind of hope for, this wish for life, that where we're going in this life and what it's going to be like, and actually what's happened, what we've got already. Many people don't develop Behçet until the 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and they have this life, and you're so far along this life, and then suddenly it goes bang, and you no longer have this life. And there's lots of yearning for reaching back and trying to work back to finding this life. Trying to be back on script. But I think it's good to recognise that the fight back to on script and the fight around how we experience ourselves amongst our peers and in the media and our society will impact on us. It fosters this experience of stress of how you view yourself, and it continues to activate those stress immune response systems that will affect you. And I think in the UK, I don't know about elsewhere, but in the UK certainly, the political ramifications have changed. And we've seen it in the UK in the last several years. There's a huge shift around this work and welfare idea. And it's apparent, so apparent in the media, and it's so apparent in the social structures and support structures around us. The social shaming of people, the making people, threatening people with their livelihoods, with their financial stability, and in some cases their housing stability as well. You know, these are direct threats to our being, to our welfare. How on earth we cannot expect people to respond to that as some sort of threat. And I see continually in our clinic people who are in extreme states of stress, who blame themselves. One, they blame themselves for their Behçet, and they're somehow they're either struggling to work or they're unable to work, and they feel punished by a system that should be supporting them. And in addition to the actual physical things happening to people, people want to work. People find it as something of value. It has meaning for people in our societies. It has meaning for us as gender people, as women, as men, as parents who look after people, who care for others. And so these things are highly meaningful. They give us purpose and meaning in our life. And people who are at work, and there's still, I'd say, it's probably about 50% of people in clinic are still in full-time employment, but many of them do struggle, and they put all their energy into maintaining a work environment and a career environment, often at the expense of other things, because it leaves them so exhausted. And even when you're in the work environment, you know, there are lots of employment law and rules about sickness, and that's fine. You can have sickness, and colleagues can be very understanding. But often, implicitly, underneath, there are other issues going on, other things that are going on. It's quite toxic. But how people view you, people don't understand what Behçet is. You tell them, or not tell them. If you tell them, they will look at you, they have no idea. If you say you have mouth ulcers really well, I get mouth ulcers, I get tired. We've had the comment yesterday, but you look fine. And look at that comment actually, that's quite important. We're also in Paris, so I thought that Albert can support up. And I think actually, people could spend a huge amount of energy trying to appear and give the appearance of acceptability, of being normal, of fitting in at huge cost often to them. And that's something that's about trying to fit in, trying to get on, and trying not to put excess burden on, or perceived burden on people like colleagues, work colleagues, and other people who are friends and family as well.
Excuse me, could you read the quote, please?
Okay, sorry, the quote is by Albert Camus says, "Nobody realises that some people expend tremendous energy merely to appear normal, or merely to be normal." I would kind of say actually most people expend quite a lot of energy to appear normal. But I think that something truly important to people is to have the mask, to put on a social mask, and to go out there and to fit in with everyone else. But that comes often at a lot of cost. And it may well be worth it, and that's fine, but it will come at a cost, because I think the way we live in the West society. Okay, I'm not sure I'm doing for time. These are just some of the effects, and you will have lots of other effects as well. I've just put a few up really, of living in this environment that's not just a biological process, it's a psychological process. It's how we perceive the world, it's how the world interacts with us. It's biopsychological mechanisms of survival and attention that affect us, and it's a social process. It's the society we live in and the way we interact with that society. I think one of the most common things that people come to talk with me about is that people do not believe them. They're disbelieved by the medical establishment, they're disbelieved by people around them. Sometimes that's because people want to be private and they don't want to talk about their Behçet. Other times it's about those issues around people not understanding the syndrome and not understanding the effect of the symptoms on them. a strong sense of being